Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from vanilla Anomaly expanded Insanity. For starters, you'll need to own the Anomaly DLC as well as the additional workshop content, vanilla expanded framework and harmony. Right at the top of this video I am throwing in a content warning. I'm not going to be using any stupid YouTube friendly algorithm dodging language in this video, like unaliving or force multipliers. Quite simply, I can't be bothered with that crap and it makes people sound like idiots. But this mod does include content that relates to self-harm and even self-sacrifice. It's disabled by default when you install the mod, so it's not something you're going to stumble across without intending to. I will be covering the mod with these interactions enabled though. I need to if I'm going to experience everything it can offer. If you find these topics are uncomfortable or you're not in a great place mentally today, by all means turn off the video. Don't put your mental health at risk for the sake of seeing my stupid cutaway jokes and listening to overindulgent explanations or fart sound effects. So, with that out of the way, let's begin.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
As you might expect from a mod that requires the Anomaly DLC, you're unlikely to get much out of Insanity if you aren't playing a colony that's focused on digging deep into the mysteries of the void. So whilst ambient horror might provide some influence over a colonist that's dedicated to studying the terrors of the world, you're going to need the monolith on your map if you really want to see how far this can go. As is the case with a lot of vanilla expanded content, you are not expected to download it and have it all enabled forever on every single colony. It's designed that you slot parts in and out as needed to better fit your goal or the theme for a run. I'd say Insanity falls into this far harder than most. Whilst it certainly isn't a performance hog, there is still a fair chunk of extra things that are going on in the background if you aren't actively or meaningfully using it. So you might be getting away with keeping things like cooking expanded turned on when they're not in use, because most of the parts are locked behind research and it's doing nothing in your game. Insanity is always going to be lurking in the background, checking against a multitude of possible effects. All of these effects can be seen and tweaked in the mod options menu, with it being potentially the most player balanced mod I've covered so far. Whilst you could normally turn specific features or events on or off, or adjust percentages around certain parts of a mod, Insanity gives you access to everything that it can impact and says, if you think you can do better, have at it. With that in mind, I'll be covering Insanity with its default values in this rundown. If you hear or see any effects and think that they're too powerful or too weak, you have the option to go in and adjust it to exactly what you want. Gotta give some kudos to the design of this. It's a smart way to stop people complaining on the workshop page about balance by leaving it entirely in their hands, although workshop commenters will always find something to complain about.
I am simply saying that you
Will you
can't
shut up?
Hey.
Shut the hell up. Shut up. Shut up.
Skylar-
Shut up.
The main addition with Insanity is sanity. I know, it's shocking, right? By default, this new need is hidden on your colonist panel, with it appearing if their sanity drops below 95%, along with a warning message to alert you. The mechanic of sanity itself works a little bit like walking along a seesaw, as many interactions that involve Anomaly content are going to test your colonist's resolve, chipping away at their sanity over time. There are a plethora of sources of sanity loss to worry about, with far less ways to regain it reliably. As such, it isn't going to be as easy to capture and contain every entity you come across anymore and just farm knowledge like crazy from your holding cells, because it'll absolutely ravage the mind of any colonist that's assigned to dark study. You'll be losing sanity for gaining knowledge points, eating twisted meat in both its raw and cooked state, suppressing entities, interacting with any creepy joiners that you've accepted, having tentacle limbs or flesh mass organs installed, being stuck in the labyrinth, having a duplicated clone alive, spending any time in unnatural darkness, performing or assisting with a psychic ritual, being the target of the unnatural corpse, obsessing over the cube, using any shard-based weaponry, injecting any serums, hearing twisted words, or reading an ancient tome. All of these interactions have a variable impact on sanity that can range from losing 0.4% a day all the way up to 5%. As there are so many potential sources, and with how quickly Anomaly events can stack if you're playing on the standard with monolith settings, sanity loss can easily spiral into unsustainable amounts per day. going beyond that safe balancing point of the seesaw and bringing it all crashing down into the realm of low sanity. So do you take a break from peering into the void to try and reclaim yourself, or do you look deeper and see what stares back at you? As long as sanity is above 10%, colonists will passively recover 1% every day. Below 10% will see them begin to spiral towards inhumanization, and they lose 1% instead. But before we go too deep and too dark, how can colonists get back in the green? The most impactful way is by destroying entities. This of course relies on waves of targets appearing to keep your sanity topped up, so you might feel more of a reason to accept and help with any distress calls, as they now offer a nice chunk of sanity regain too. Clearing the large threats like revenants, Nokia and pit gates by destroying them is also highly beneficial, so you need to weigh up if it's worth studying or smashing that spine by looking at your current sanity values first. It might be just a little bit too much and push somebody over the edge completely to add more suppression jobs into their daily routine. Sanity can be restored by social interactions with another sane colonist, by performing successful rituals if you have ideology, or by throwing a party. One of the more reliable ways to restore sanity is by assigning a bit of meditation time every day, because a clear mind is a peaceful mind.
Sorry, do you mind if I...
Fuck off! Fuck off! Fucking fuck off! You fuck!
You can open your mind even further to these effects, for either positive or negative gain, by consuming Psychite Tea. This will double the impact of sanity effects whilst the high on Psychite Tea buff is active, so Flake and Yayo are safe for your sanity, just not for your health, as it's not Psychite as a broad drug that's doing this, it's very specifically when it's brewed into tea. If you're timing this correctly and taking it before recreation hours and your evening meditation, this might allow you to claw back a larger amount of sanity via socialization in the rec room, and then you can let the remaining effect fall off harmlessly overnight, before waking up to poke entities with a stick again, or crack open the Forbidden Tome for a little bit of light reading. Just make sure if you are trying to schedule it in this way that the people socializing are sane. The last thing you want is it doubling the impact of any mad ramblings. Interestingly, psychopathic colonists seem to experience halved sanity gains and losses too, making them extremely resilient to the effects of any void study. It does of course then take longer for them to recover, but it won't be quite so blink and you miss it, now they've gone insane levels of oops. So we've talked about and around sanity all of this time, but what impact is it actually having as it falls? Between 75 and 100% sanity, you won't notice any difference. Sure, someone at 75% sanity might claim the occasional odd thing, that drop pods are flying overhead and leaving chemtrails, the world map is actually flat, penoxycillin contains a mind control microchip, or exposure to orbital trade beacons is what's actually causing the flu. But they aren't a risk, they're just an idiot. Between 75 and 50% sanity, the impact becomes apparent. Mood is reduced by 1, mental break threshold increases, making them more likely to snap. They gain a 10% chance that any chat becomes strange chat, and a 25% chance that their kind words are replaced by twisted words. To go along with these standard Twitter user social chances, they're also twice as likely to slight someone and 1.5 times as likely to outright insult them. A new risk appears for their mental breaks too, in the form of void drawing, which will further negatively impact the sanity of those who see the scrolls left around the base. There is a minor upside to this red pill transformation though, in that entity study speed is increased by 25% and knowledge gain is further enhanced by 0.07 per hour. This is where that balancing act comes into play. By letting your colonists dip their toe into the sea of madness, they'll better progress your anomaly study, but if you let them swim in its waters for too long, it makes it almost impossible to pull them back out, and it may drag down your other colonists along with them. From 50 to 25%, that red pill becomes black. A more severe impact on mood, mental break threshold, chit chat is now at a 25% chance to become strange chat, with a 50% chance that kind words and deep talk become distorted into either twisted words or unsettling talk. Not only are their standard conversations likely to turn sour, they have an entirely new interaction called vicious mockery.
I cast vicious mockery, nat 20, let's go.
You're a shot, motherfucker, and nobody likes you.
Shot!
As well as mocking others, slights are 3 times as likely and insults are twice as frequent. Void drawing can still occur alongside another mental break called mockery spree, which is like an insulting spree conducted by a drama kid that's saved up years worth of shower arguments to unleash in a single blow across the colony. To make up for these horrific negatives, study speed is now 50% faster and knowledge has an additional 0.15 gained every hour. Although with quite so many risks floating around, you need to be really on the ball, or you'll see just how fast a colonist can descend into the next stage of sanity loss. That tide is getting stronger, the whirlpool spinning faster. Everything is making it harder to pull them back out, and now it wants to drag them all the way down to the murky depths. Below 25% sanity, the colonist's mind begins to fall away. A constant -5 mood. Mental break threshold is increased by 15%. That's worse than you would get from the very neurotic trait. Chat has a 50% chance to be strange. Kind words are always twisted. Deep talk is unsettling 75% of the time. Not only will these colonists now throw out vicious mockery, they'll outright slander others too, which harms the target's relationships with other colonists. The slight, insult, drawing and mockery spree side is all the same. But the upside to study is now 75% and the additional knowledge per hour is 0.23. But if you don't severely limit what this colonist is doing at this point, they risk dropping below 10% sanity, which sees the daily restoration of sanity become a daily loss, making it almost inevitable that they will hit 0% and...
Oh, crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
What madness involves will be down to if you ticked the content warning box in the mod options or not. Without it ticked, the colonists will wander in a daze anywhere between 1 and 3 days, with them losing the ability to communicate normally. Instead, they'll do inhuman rambling, vicious mockery, or slander. Even if you arrest a colonist in this state, they will not snap out of it like the majority of other mental breaks. It simply needs to run its course. Keeping them in prison will make it easier to get others out of the firing line for their vocal barrages though. If you've checked the content warning box, this colonist will also have a chance to self-harm whilst wandering in this state, causing cuts that are small enough to naturally heal without posing a serious health risk, but still leaving a bit of a mess as they leave little bloody splats whilst wandering. I've found as well with this mental break that it will pause your game occasionally as it's running down the duration. I can't quite find out what it's specifically tied to, and as of now I'm unsure as to what to suggest as a solution. Of course, the way my videos usually go, this is going to be fixed by the time it's uploaded anyway. When this madness effect has run its course, there are 2 different outcomes if you have the content warning off, or 3 if you have it turned on. There is a small chance that they're going to recover, regaining a fraction of their sanity and ideally needing a long time in a safe environment to build them back up to a stable level again. As cruel as it may sound, in some cases imprisoning these colonists or keeping them separated from others is going to have the best chance of letting the worst of these effects pass. Just give them a bit of alone time to meditate and a nice cup of tea, and if you can, have them be the ones to venture out and get the killing blow on any major void threats. It'll help them get the voices out of their head. They can unfortunately slip deeper into their madness, entering a state of inhumanization. This effect is the same you would get if you were playing with the inhuman meme from Ideology, or what you'll see affecting any cultist raiders. It removes 50% of pain. Notice that I didn't say it halves pain, the impact is different. This is giving you immunity to the first 50% of pain that a colonist should experience, so any minor wounds or uncomfortable scars will no longer cause issues with mood or consciousness loss. It's like a constant anesthesia effect. Social interactions will be forever scuffed with an inhuman pawn, with it disabling the majority of available options and completely removing their opinions of others. Not only that, they're going to lose 12 skill in animals, art and social, so for that kind of cost you would expect some upsides. And there are a few, but maybe not enough to justify grabbing this right away. Inhuman colonists have no beauty or outdoor needs. They share thoughts similar to the psychopathic trait, so they're no longer going to be impacted by a large amount of negative moodlets like seeing corpses or having any allies die. They also have a permanent +8 mood thanks to void pleasure, as well as being able to meditate at a void-focused structure. And they're able to eat twisted meat without a mood debuff, but that meat still has a negative effect on sanity. So if you are trying to claw your way back out of inhumanization, maybe don't let them eat the monsters and eldritch horrors. The third option comes if you have the box ticked in the options, and that's going to see the colonist go into a sacrificial state, repeatedly harming themselves to give their life to the void. This can be stopped by knocking them out or arresting them, which instead sees them become inhumanized. So all things considered, by leaving that box unchecked, you really aren't missing out on a great deal. I'd imagine most players are going to scramble to arrest a self-sacrificing colonist anyway, rather than let them see it through to the end, and the self-harm injuries are small enough that they aren't going to be causing permanent afflictions. It's not like they're taking off entire digits, ears or eyes. The mod isn't going as dark as the scene in the Evil Dead remake with that girl in the bathroom taking off chunks of her own face meat. It's more like whenever somebody needs to make a blood sacrifice at an altar, so they'll cut their palm open. You know, the place that's always coming into contact with potential sources of infection. It needs to flex and bend constantly and is really important in operating essentially everything that we do in life. That 100% seems like the best place to intentionally wound. So now that we've got someone who's inhumanized, this isn't the end. The sanity bar can swing the other way to potentially restore their humanity and undo the damage caused by the void's influence. So much like how sliding down the sanity meter had negative impacts when you were sane, climbing the sanity meter when you're inhumanized essentially mirrors those negatives back. At 0 to 25% sanity, an inhumanized character isn't affected. They're happily existing in their void bubble, away from the light of social interactions and human emotion. If you can get them to reach 25 to 50%, some sane thoughts will start to return. Their mood is reduced by 1, mental break threshold increases by 4%, and they have similar effects to a sane colonist that was at the crumbling level, which was between 25 and 0% sanity. So they're going to gain those negative mental breaks and return to negative socialization, most likely pushing them back down to that 0 to 25% range. You really need to push to bring someone back from the inhuman abyss. Once they reach 50 to 75% sanity, when inhumanized, it operates the same as being at 50 to 25% sanity when sane. So now you can really begin to fight back the inhuman urges. When you were sane, you had to carefully manage how far you dabbled into the dark studies to allow your colonists to climb back out. Now you need to carefully manage them not returning to their eldritch studies so they can continue their rehabilitation and go a little higher every day. At 75 to 100% sanity whilst inhumanized, they're nearly there, and their head is splitting apart due to the void's influence trying to claw them back. A constant negative mood impact of 5, 15% increased mental break threshold, and the effects from a sane character in the 75 to 50% range. So disturbing interactions begin to fade. They're reacclimatized into humanity and are able to hold a conversation without disturbing others around them constantly. Finally, if you kept them on the straight and narrow and they hit that magic 100%, they once again become human, swapping the inhumanized trait and health effect for one of the 5 new traits. This also confers a massive 50 mood bonus for 5 days, as they are elated with their own recovery. However, the void still sings in their ear with a disturbing level of clarity. So from this point on, they'll receive twice the impact from any negative sanity effects, forever. You need to keep them as far away as possible from the dark, mysterious influences of the world, as they're only ever just a few steps away from completely losing themselves again. The 5 new traits that can be earned are germaphobe, non-committal, impulsive, distractible, and mood swings. Germaphobe has 1 easily offset negative, 1 potentially crippling negative, and a fantastic upside. It's going to make the colonist essentially useless for any cleaning jobs, as they'll take 5 times longer to clear up any messes, painstakingly ensuring that they have every last speck of debris before moving on. This can be easily avoided by disabling them from cleaning. The worst downside is that the negative moodlets around a dirty environment are now far more severe, at -5, -10 and -15 mood. So you're going to need to have everybody else staying on top of cleaning jobs more often to ensure that this colonist isn't losing their mind over any mess around the base. For an upside, it makes them immune to the flu, malaria, and plague. So in biomes like a rainforest, this becomes extremely beneficial. You just need to get used to them flipping out over your corridors never being spotless.
Oh, the dust.
The place isn't that dusty!
Non-committal isn't awful, as long as it's landing on the right xenotype or someone that isn't beautiful. High mates are going to be all kinds of messed up if they get this, and attractive colonists will be constantly rebuffing simps and causing mood penalties. This is going to cap max opinion of another colonist at 25 and stop them ever attempting to form a relationship. So win-win if this lands on an ugly colonist, because it was never going to happen anyway. Now they can say that they're single because of this trait and not because of their face. That looks and smells like raw hamburger. Impulsive is almost entirely negative, unless you've managed to pair it with something like Tortured Artist. This is going to increase mental break threshold by 12% and put global loss certainty up to 250%, so the colonist will be constantly freaking out over minor inconveniences, and they're extremely easy to sway over to another ideology. Dangerous if you have visitors staying on your tile for an extended period. This can work nicely with Tortured Artist, as they're going to be having a minor break basically whenever they have no catharsis buff, but to make up for it, they're going to have inspirations for days. Distractible is relatable in a way that I kind of hate. The colonist will cycle between either being focused or distracted, with focused being a buff and distracted being a... what was I saying? The positive side lasts between 2 and 14 hours, granting a 50% bonus to global work speed, so you can high roll a pretty solid effect here. Equally, you can swap into a focused state right before bedtime and have it expire the moment you wake up, falling into distracted. This lasts between 10 and 16 hours and lowers global work speed by 75%, so the colonist is going to spend far longer in a negative state than they will in the positive, meaning they either need to try and stick to work that isn't so heavily impacted by the global speed, like socialization tasks, hauling or cleaning jobs, or you're going to need to wake them up and get them working as soon as they flip into a positive side. It might all be a bit micromanagement heavy for some though. I'd just keep them on the easy jobs, to be honest. Mood Swings gives 4 potential states for the colonist to enter, with it lasting anywhere from 1 day to an entire quadrum, so you might need a bit of a chemical fix on standby if they roll the worst outcome for the longest time. This goes from very happy at +12 to happy with +6, down at sad on -8, and then crashes with very sad at -16. This can be extremely dangerous if you have somebody in the colony teetering on low sanity, as they'll be throwing out horrific insults and causing discord around the colony, potentially making that -16 push someone all the way into a major or even extreme break territory. You do have a couple of extra options to try and offset the impact that low sanity colonists can have on everybody else. At least that's what I'm claiming these bits of gear are for. I know some of you out there are running the Forbidden mod and have other ideas entirely. You have 2 bits of clothing from Complex Clothing Research, the gag and the straight jacket, which I'm just now learning isn't a straight jacket. I've said that wrong my entire life. The gag can be made out of cloth or wool, with it only needing 20 materials. It covers the jaw layer and provides a little bit of armour and some insulation, as well as working for slave suppression offset too, so you can pair this with a collar and a body strap for total overkill. The main reason for gagging a colonist is that it removes their ability to talk, rendering them incapable of interfering with everybody else's sanity if they're slipping towards inhumanity, and can't go a day without upsetting someone. The straitjacket is far more severe. This is worn on the outer layer, covering the torso, neck, arms and shoulders. It can be made from leather, wool or cloth, needing 80 units to craft. Whilst it can obviously provide somewhat reasonable armour and temperature protection, again this is mainly here for the offsets. It increases slave suppression by 25%, lowers move speed by 1 and completely removes the manipulation stat on the wearer, as well as stripping them of the ability to wield weapons. If you're actively trying to get people to have the madness break, as you want an inhuman colony, this can make sure that they're unable to seriously harm themselves if you have those settings enabled, so they can only realistically land on either the recovered or inhumanized state. If you're also running mods that allow you to forcefully dress a prisoner, these jackets are ideal to stop them hurting one another in a barrack style of prison, if someone gets a berserk break, and you can prevent them from doing pretty much anything if they try and escape. Without mods, you might be able to encourage your prisoners to equip this out of desperation too. You'll need to strip them and remove their gear from the environment, crank the temperature right down in the cell and leave this as the only clothing available to them. They'll put it on to avoid hypothermia. There are a couple of final interactions with the ending of Anomaly, and the DLC has been out for long enough that yes, I'm going to talk about it. So spoiler warning if you claim to be invested in seeing the ending for yourself, but somehow haven't made it there in the 6 months that it's been out already. As you're given a choice between closing or embracing the void, these effects will impact sanity going forward in that colony too. If you choose to disrupt the link and deny the void's influence, all colonists are immediately restored to 100% sanity. This is going to remove any inhumanization that was in effect and grant colonists recovered traits if required. This, however, does not remove the sanity mechanic from the game. Doing any further study or actions associated with Anomaly content is going to continue to lower sanity in the same way it did before. On the other hand, if you say to hell with it and ascend someone to Void Touched, the impacted colonist will have any potential positive sanity gains reduced to essentially nothing, making it near impossible for them to ever regain their humanity. They are supposed to be an envoy of the void itself after all, so it's going to be a bit odd for them to simply shrug off their fate. The final part to mention is around biotech integration, as whilst babies don't suffer with the sanity mechanic, children do, meaning you can turn your colony into the shining corridors and have a bunch of inhumanized kids wandering around, drawing pentagrams on the floor and dissecting their toys. If you play with Race's expanded androids, you'll find that unawakened androids are safe from sanity mechanics too, although once they gain self-awareness, they are able to have complete mental breakdowns. It makes for an extremely niche colony to run, awakened, inhumanized androids. And there you have it, the first step towards vanilla Anomaly expanded content. It seems like a solid stepping stone to build off, using very involved but individual mechanics rather than doing one large content pack that engulfs everything. If future Anomaly releases follow this trend, it should make it really easy to customize your perfect Void run. You can prune and tweak mods to play just right, rather than having to drop in cherry picker and cut out content that you don't want. It's also nice to see that sanity was diversified from mood enough to justify it as its own mechanic. Colonists aren't going insane because they ate without a table. It isn't making light of the horrific nature of Void Study. They may be upset that they had to stand to eat their dinner, sure, but the reason they're losing their mind over it is because the dinner was made out of the fleshy abominations they had killed the day before. So with that wrapped, I have just seen that Rue's xenotypes have finally updated. Expect to see coverage on those soon. If you'd like to see the current suggestion list for upcoming mod rundown videos, it's available to view on my Patreon. All the posts there are totally free to read and it's pinned at the very top of the page. I update it about once a week or so with any new recommendations that have been left in the comments, so if you'd like to support me in producing content like this, you can do so for just £1 a month. It gets your name in the credits of these videos and helps me not to die. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon or evening. Take care.